People were laughing when it happened. That soft, careless laughter you hear in places where money feels endless. A mall kind of laughter. The kind that floats above polished floors and glass walls and never touches the ground. That laughter shattered the moment his voice cut through it. Loud, sharp, cruel, familiar, in the worst way. She hadn't seen him at first. She was standing near the edge of a luxury store, close enough to smell the expensive perfume drifting from inside, far enough to know she didn't belong there today. Clearance rack. Modest bag in her hand. Fingers tight around the handles like, if she let go, everything else might slip too. She was just passing through. Just another face in a crowd that never looks twice. Then he laughed. And her whole body froze. Asterisk before the story continues. Take a brief moment. If this story is touching your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with others. Your support gives us the strength to keep bringing you more powerful stories like this. Now let's continue. That laugh wasn't just sound. It was memory. It was nights of arguing over bills. It was him pacing the room, calling her dreams childish. It was the way he'd sighed when she said she was tired, like her exhaustion annoyed him. She turned slowly, hoping she was wrong, hoping it was someone else. But there he was, well-dressed, confident, smiling like life had finally proven him right. Look at you, he said, his voice carrying, making sure people heard. Still, shopping with dreams instead of money. Heads turned. Conversations paused. The air shifted. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat locked. Not from fear, but from shock. From the way the past had just walked up and slapped her in public. He took her silence as permission. He always did. He stepped closer, eyes scanning her clothes, her shoes, the small bag in her hand. He laughed again, louder this time, feeding off the attention. I knew you'd end up like this, he said. Same nothing life. Same broke look. She tried to step back, tried to turn away. Cats when he shoved her. Not enough to knock her down, not enough to draw blood, just enough. Enough to make her stumble. Enough to make her balance betray her, enough to let everyone see it happen and feel uncomfortable about stopping it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone covered their mouth. Someone else pulled out a phone. Secura glanced over, but didn't rush. Not yet. This wasn't screaming. This wasn't chaos. This was humiliation. And humiliation often gets treated like entertainment. She caught herself before falling. Her shopping bag hit the floor. Something small, rolled out, cheap, ordinary. She stared at it for half a second, then bent down slowly to pick it up. Every movement measured. Every breath controlled. He smiled wider. You remember why I left you, right? He said, leaning in close enough that only she could hear the poison in his tone. I couldn't build a future with someone who had nothing to offer. Too poor to matter. That one landed. Not because it was new, but because it was old. Because it was the same sentence he'd used years ago when he packed his things and walked out while she cried on the couch. He expected tears now too. He expected anger. He expected her to finally break so he could feel justified all over again. She didn't give him that dot. She stood up straight, smoothed her coat, lifted her chin. Her eyes met his, calm in a way that didn't match the moment. To calm. Like still water before a storm. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't defend herself. She didn't explain. She said nothing. That silence confused him. It annoyed him. Silence doesn't give you anything to fight. It doesn't beg. It doesn't argue. It just exists. Heavy, watching, remembering. What? Nothing to say? He scoffed, glancing around to make sure people were still watching. He stepped back, satisfied, like he'd checked off a box he'd been carrying for years. Like this moment had been waiting for him. He straightened his jacket, adjusted his watch, and laughed one last time before turning away. Good luck out. Here, he said over his shoulder. You're gonna need it. He walked off feeling tall, feeling proven, feeling like the world had finally agreed with his decision to leave her behind. His friends called after him from across the mall. Impressed, amused, unaware they were watching the opening scene of their own embarrassment. She stayed where she was for a moment. Let the noise return. Let them all breathe again. People slowly looked away, pretending they hadn't just watched something ugly. A woman nearby whispered, I'm sorry, but didn't stop walking. Life moved on quickly, like it always does when the hurt isn't yours. She bent down, picked up her bag, and stood quietly. Her hand brushed against her ring. Simple design. Heavy weight, not cheap, not borrowed. Earned. Across the open floor, a man in a tailored suit had stopped walking. He had seen the shove. Seen the way she held herself afterward. Seen the silence. Around him, others noticed too. Men who usually never stopped for anything. Men who moved markets with phone calls. They paused. Heads lowered slightly. Respect without announcement. She didn't look at them. Not yet, she adjusted her coat, took a breath, and whispered so softly only she could hear it. Not today. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't anger. It was a decision. She began to walk, her steps steady, her back straight. Behind her, the laughter had fully returned. The mall sparkled again. Shoppas smiled again. But something had shifted. Something invisible but heavy lingered in the air, because what just happened wasn't over. Not even close. The real weight of a moment doesn't always fall when the crowd is watching. Sometimes it settles quietly. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it follows you. And sometimes the silence after humiliation is louder than any scream. And that silence was still echoing as she disappeared into the crowd. Carrying more than a shopping bag with her. Carrying a past that refused to stay buried. Carrying a future no one there could see yet. Carrying a storm that hadn't spoken its name.
The story didn't end when he walked away. That's what he thought. That's what people always think when they get the last word. But humiliation has a way of traveling. It doesn't stay in one place. It spreads. It whispers. It follows. And in a mall full of glass and mirrors, nothing stays hidden for long. Phones were already out. Someone had caught the shove on video. Someone else caught the laugh. The clip replayed in small circles, passed from hand to hand, screen to screen. People leaned in. Faces tightened. Whispers moved faster than footsteps. Some shook their heads at her like she had done something wrong just by standing there. Others looked at her with pity, that quiet pity that doesn't help but still hurts. The kind that says, "I'm glad it wasn't me." She felt all of it without turning around. You don't need to see judgment to feel it. It settles on your skin like cold air. She kept walking, slow and steady, as if speed might make her look weak. Her shoulders stayed back. Her face stayed calm. But inside, memories were waking up. A one-bedroom apartment with thin walls. The sound of neighbors arguing through the night. Late notices taped to the door. Her sitting at the small table with bills spread out like a losing hand. Him pacing the floor, angry at numbers that didn't change no matter how loud he got. Her promising things would get better. Him laughing at that promise. She remembered the night she lost her job. How she came home early, hands shaking, trying to explain. How he didn't hug her. Didn't ask if she was okay. Just stared at her like she had failed a test he never told her about. "I can't build a future with someone broken," he said back then. Final. Like a judge passing sentence. And now here he was again, years later, same words, different place. The mall just made it shinier. Across the way, he had already turned the moment into a story. He leaned against a high table near a private bar, drink in hand, laughing with friends who looked just like him. Well-dressed. Loud. Certain the world belonged to them. "I told you," he said, shaking his head with a grin. She was nothing even back then. Some people just stay stuck. They laughed. Clinked glasses. One of them asked if that was really her. He nodded proudly, like he'd just proven a point that mattered. He replayed the shove with his hands, exaggerating it, making it sound funny. "She embarrassed herself," he added. "I did her a favor." The mall kept moving. Music played. Sales were announced. And she walked past store after store, feeling like the past was chasing her down each hallway. Employees glanced up as she passed. Some looked away quickly. Some looked twice. A few stared a little longer. They saw the ring. Not flashy, but heavy. The kind you don't buy to show off. The kind that means something. A few of them recognized her face. Not from the mall. From magazines left in break rooms. From articles about companies and foundations and quiet deals that didn't need headlines. But they said nothing. Not yet. Power has a way of hiding when it wants to watch first. He wasn't done. He never was. Bullies get bold when they feel safe. And he felt very safe. Surrounded by friends. By money. By laughter that told him he was still winning. He called out to her. Loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Hey," he said, smirking. "You gonna apologize or what?" She stopped. Slowly. The mall seemed to lean in. "Apologize for embarrassing me," he went on. "You can't just exist like that and make people uncomfortable." His friends laughed harder this time. Phones came up again. Someone whispered, "Oh damn," like this was a show they hadn't paid for but didn't want to miss. She turned around. Just enough to face him. Her expression didn't change. No anger. No tears. Just a steady look that made the space between them feel heavier than before. For a moment, he hesitated. Something in her eyes unsettled him. But he pushed through it. He always did. "What?" he said. "You don't have anything to say now, either?" She could have ended it right there. One sentence. One name. One truth dropped in the middle of that polished floor. She could have watched their faces fall. Could have watched his confidence crack. But she didn't. She stood there, silent again. And that silence began to work on him. It made him talk more. Made him louder. Made him careless. "See," he said to his friends. "Still the same. Nothing to offer." She turned away once more and continued walking. The crowd buzzed behind her. The injustice thickened. It wrapped around the moment, making it harder to breathe. What no one noticed was what was happening behind the velvet ropes of the private lounge upstairs. A man sat alone for a second, phone in his hand, video paused on the screen. His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened. He checked his watch, not because he was late, but because he was deciding something. Around him, people waited. Not because he told them to. Because power recognizes itself. Down below, she took another step forward, every stride heavy with restraint. The truth was walking with her. Waiting. Timing itself. Because sometimes justice doesn't rush. Sometimes it lets the wrong grow loud. Sometimes it lets arrogance speak freely. So when the truth finally arrives, there's no denying what came before it. And as she moved deeper into the mall, with eyes on her back and whispers chasing her heels, the moment she had been holding back was getting closer. Not louder. Not angrier. Just closer. The first thing people noticed wasn't his face. It was the way the air changed when he stepped forward. Conversations thinned out. Laughter faded. Even the music drifting from the stores seemed to lower itself, like it knew something important was about to happen. He didn't rush. He didn't push through the crowd. He walked with calm, measured steps, the kind that come from a life where time bends for you instead of against you. He wore a dark suit, simple and sharp, no loud logos, no need to prove anything. His presence alone did the work. Managers spotted him from across the floor and straightened like students caught slouching. Security guards adjusted their stance, suddenly alert, suddenly respectful. People who didn't even know his name felt it in their chest. This was authority. The quiet kind. The ex was still laughing when the man reached them. Mid-story. Mid-ego. One hand raised, drink still in the other, enjoying his moment. Then he noticed the silence. Not the normal kind. The heavy kind. The kind that makes you stop talking without knowing why. The stranger stepped beside the woman and placed a hand gently on her back. Protective. Familiar. Not for show. The touch alone said more than words ever could. "Are you hurt?" he asked her. His voice was low. Concerned. Like the chaos around them didn't exist. Like the only thing that mattered in that mall was the woman standing in front of him. She shook her head slowly. Just once. Her eyes stayed on his. Not on the crowd. Not on her ex. On him. That's when he turned. Not sharply. Not dramatically. Just enough to face the man who had been laughing seconds earlier. "This is my wife," he said. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed like glass shattering on marble. Clean. Final. Air seemed to leave the room. Faces drained of color. Phones lowered without instruction. Someone whispered, "Oh," like they had just realized they were standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. The ex blinked. Once. Twice. His smile stayed frozen on his face, like it didn't get the message yet. "Her," he laughed too quickly. Too loud. "Your wife." He tried to recover. Tried to turn it into a joke. That's what people do when the ground shifts under them. The billionaire looked at him then. Really looked. And there was no anger there. No shouting. No threat. Just a calm, steady gaze that made the ex suddenly feel small in a way he never had before. "Yes," the man said simply. Silence followed. Thick. Uncomfortable. Honest. He didn't stop there. He didn't need to, but he chose to. Not for revenge. For truth. He spoke about her without raising his voice. He talked about the nights she worked late when no one believed in her. About the risks she took when failure was the only thing promised. About the companies she helped build from nothing. About the people she employed. The families that depended on decisions she made quietly, without headlines. "She sits on boards that decide futures," he said. "Not because she married me. Because she earned it." Every word peeled something away from the ex's confidence. The laughter died completely now. His friends shifted. One of them took a step back, like distance might save him. The ex tried to speak. Words came out tangled. "I didn't know," he said. "I mean, how could I?" That was the truth. He never knew. He never looked close enough. The mall manager appeared almost instantly, face tight, voice shaking just a little. Apologies poured out. Public ones. Clear ones. Not directed at the loud man with the drink. Directed at her. "I'm so sorry for what happened," the manager said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This should never have occurred." Security stepped in then. Not toward her. Toward him. The ex. "Sir," one of them said, firm and polite, "we need you to come with us." The word, sir, sounded different now. "Hello." "What?" he protested. "I didn't do anything wrong." No one laughed this time. No one backed him up. His friends avoided his eyes. The cameras stayed down. He was no longer a guest. He was a problem. And problems get removed quietly. As he was escorted away, his eyes searched the crowd for something familiar. Something supportive. They found nothing. Just stares. Some cold. Some disappointed. Some satisfied. The power had shifted. Not with yelling. Not with fists. Not with insults. With truth. The billionaire turned back to his wife. His hand still rested gently at her back. He didn't ask if she wanted revenge. He didn't ask what she wanted to say. He waited. She stepped forward. Just one step. The mall felt like it leaned toward her. She looked at her ex, really looked at him. The man who once told her she was nothing. The man who thought money decided worth. "You left because you thought I was nothing," she said. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It didn't fall. It just was. "You were wrong." That was all. No speech. No insult. No victory dance. Just truth. His face crumbled then. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like a building realizing too late that its foundation is gone. She turned away. Didn't watch him leave. Didn't need to. As they walked together through the mall, the crowd parted without being told. Respect moved faster than fear ever could. People whispered her name now. Not in pity. In recognition. And behind them, the place where she had been shoved minutes earlier looked smaller somehow. Less important. Like a bad memory already fading. Because when power reveals itself, real power, it doesn't scream. It doesn't brag. It simply shows up. And everything else moves out of the way. The apology didn't come when it mattered. It never does. It came later, tucked away from the crowd, stripped of witnesses, thin and shaking. It came after the mall doors had closed behind them. After the whispers had settled. After the truth had already done its work. He stood alone in a quiet hallway with nothing but his regret and the sound of his own breathing, asking for forgiveness like it was a refund he thought he still deserved. But some doors don't reopen. He had lost more than a moment that day. By nightfall, calls stopped coming in. Emails went unanswered. A meeting he thought was routine turned cold and short. Someone mentioned conduct. Someone else mentioned optics. By the next morning, his name carried weight for all the wrong reasons. His job slipped away quietly, just like his confidence had. His reputation followed. The same people who laughed with him now kept their distance. Power doesn't like being embarrassed. It doesn't forgive easily. And the illusion he had carried for years, that he was better, higher, untouchable, cracked completely. Meanwhile, she walked out of the mall into open air, her hand wrapped gently in her husband's. Cameras were gone. Crowds thinned. The noise faded. Outside, the world felt wider, calmer, like it always does when truth settles. She didn't rush. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. She wasn't walking away as a victim. She was walking away as proof. Proof that worth is not measured by where you shop, or what you carry, or how quiet your struggle looks to people who don't care to ask. Proof that being underestimated can be a season, not a sentence. Her husband didn't squeeze her hand like someone saving her. He walked beside her like someone who knew she'd already saved herself long before he ever showed up. He had met her after the hardest nights, after the doubt, after the rebuilding. He didn't pull her out of the fire. He met her once she had learned how to stand in it without burning. That part mattered, because this was never a rescue story. It was a recognition story. He had recognized her value when the world once ignored it, when doors stayed closed, when voices spoke over hers. He saw what others missed. Not potential, not pity, strength, discipline, quiet fire. Inside the mall, life returned to normal the way it always does. Music played again. Sales were announced again. Shoppers laughed again. But something invisible had shifted. Employees whispered differently now. Security stood straighter. Managers remembered the look on her face. Calm. Unmoved. Moments like that leave a mark. And somewhere else, far from the mall, he sat alone with his thoughts. The apology he had rehearsed played over and over in his head. He told himself he would have acted differently if he had known. But deep down, he knew the truth. He didn't need to know her status to treat her with respect. He chose cruelty because he thought he could afford it. That realization hurt more than losing his job. He remembered the silence she gave him. How it felt heavier than yelling. How it followed him longer than the shove ever would. He mistook it for weakness. He always had. And now, with nothing but time and regret, he finally understood what that silence really was. It was control. She never needed to prove anything to him. He had been fighting a battle she already finished. Days passed. Stories moved on. New videos replaced the old ones. But the lesson stayed. It settled into the bones of everyone who witnessed it, even if they never spoke about it again. Especially them. Because dignity doesn't shout. It waits. It compounds quietly, like interest. It grows when no one is watching. And one day, it stands in front of you fully formed, asking nothing, explaining nothing, simply existing as truth. She went back to her life. To meetings. To decisions that shaped other lives. To rooms where people listened when she spoke. But she didn't forget where she came from. She never did. That memory wasn't a wound anymore. It was a foundation. And that's the part people misunderstand. Struggle doesn't lower your value. It reveals it. The billionaire knew that. The mall learned it. And he learned it too, just far too late. So remember this. Never mock someone for where they are standing today. Never confuse silence with surrender. Never assume money makes you important or struggle makes someone small. Because power fades. Money shifts. Titles disappear. But dignity grows. And those who mistake quiet strength for weakness often wake up one day to find the people they laughed at have already rewritten the ending, without them in it.